Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where it's an absolutely gorgeous day here at the park. I'm finally able to wear short sleeves again. It's been a really long time since I've come outside wearing a t-shirt, but today it's just a beautiful day. 27 degrees Celsius. You know, you've been like overseas and away from America for a long time. When you've taken up the metric system, then you can't really convert to like Fahrenheit anymore. But yeah, it's a beautiful day here. I'm sitting next to the little stream at the park. You might be able to hear the water in the background. The ground is all wet around here because the daycare kids were all out here earlier with their teachers, splashing around, enjoying the warm sunshine and cool water. They've all gone back to school to take their naps, so I kind of have the place to myself now. Today's video is going to be about another 35mm SLR camera, and this one is going to be the Konica Autorex camera. For those of you who are new to my channel, I sell vintage Japanese cameras at my online store, japanvintagecamera.com. I have an Etsy store which is also called Japan Vintage Camera. So if you're interested in purchasing this Konica or another vintage Japanese camera, please visit one of my stores. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. So on the surface, the Autorex looks a lot like any other 35mm SLR camera from the era, which were made by so many people. But this camera has a feature which sets it apart from the others, and that is its ability to shoot in the half-frame format. So by simply flipping the switch on the top of the camera, you can switch between 35mm full format and half format. The half-frame format became popular in the late 1950s as kind of a more economical way to use 35mm film. Believe it or not, in those days, people didn't make so much money, especially here in Japan, and they were quite careful in spending and such like that. And if there was a way you could buy a roll of 35mm film and get twice as many pictures out of it, that was a good way to save a little bit of money. And as most people, when they shot with cameras like this, when they made prints, these were generally, say, 4x6 or 5x7 prints, which they could put in a photo album or such, and you didn't really need a lot of resolution. So the half-frame format was perfectly adequate for most people at the time. And when you think about today, the 35mm film and 35mm half-frame format, your typical 35mm film still is capable of producing images with much higher resolution than current digital technology. And maybe digital is probably close to the equivalent of the 35mm half-frame format. A lot of it depends on how accurate you are in focusing and the quality of the camera you're using, and of course the processing. But if all of these are good, you're going to get results with the half-frame 35mm film at least as good as you're going to get from a top quality digital camera. And when it comes to shooting precisely in the half-frame format, you can't really do much better than the Konica Autorex. Being an SLR camera with very high quality lenses, you're quite easily able to focus very accurately and to compose quite well. One problem that we have with the old half-frame format cameras, like the Olympus Pin and whatever, is that most of those are, let's say, what we say, scale focus cameras. So you can't really precisely focus the camera, you just kind of have to focus the ring to the approximate distance of your subject. And depending on your settings on the camera and the speed of the film you're using, you may not get the best possible results, though with practice you can get excellent results. With a camera like this, you can get perfect results when shooting in the half-frame format. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of the Konica Autorex. And by the way, this is the P version. On the top here, it's quite simple. We have the film rewind knob with a lever which pops out to make rewinding more easy. We have the lever here, which I previously mentioned, and this lever does two things. The first thing it does is it closes mask on the back side of the camera, and you can see that here. If I switch the lever back and forth, you can kind of see doors on either side closing slightly. So when you flip the lever, it moves the masks on either side, but it also changes the gearing and the winding mechanism to allow you to move the film half a frame at a time instead of a full frame at a time. On the top here, next to the shutter release button, we have the film counter. Next to that we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release. And here we have the film winding and shutter charging lever. On the back of the camera here we have the viewfinder, and the viewfinder accepts a screw-on flash adapter. You place the flash adapter and a nut around the inside will grab onto the inside of the viewfinder and allow you to mount a flash shoe on top of the camera. I do have the flash shoe with this camera and I will attach it later. On the back here we have a reminder dial to let you know what kind of film you have loaded in the camera. Once again, this is a fully mechanical camera, so as long as you remember what kind of film you have loaded in the camera and are making your exposures accordingly, or have that film speed programmed into your light meter or light meter app, this is completely irrelevant, so don't worry about it. If you forget to set this, it's not going to make any difference in the operation of the camera. On the bottom here we have the release button, which allows you to release the winding mechanism so you can rewind the film. And to center here we have a standard 1/4" tripod socket. And here we have a cutaway to make it a little easier to load your film cartridges. And this here is the release, which you push downward to open the film door. Moving to the front of the camera, we have the shutter speed dial here, and this has dovetails on it to allow you to use an accessory light meter. The Autorex P, as this one is here, it is completely mechanical with no electronics whatsoever other than a sync socket for your flash. And if you need to use if you want a Konica meter, they're kind of hard to find for these cameras, but I still see them from time to time. And you would attach it here, and as you turn the shutter speed, it automatically aligns the needles in the light meter to allow you to choose the best exposure for the available light, providing you're lucky enough to find first a light meter at all, and then second one that actually works accurately, which if you do find one, you're quite lucky. On the bottom side here we have a self timer, and down here we have a depth of field preview lever, and you can probably see the aperture blade stopping down as I push this in and out. And on the other side here we have the release lever to allow you to release the lens. And on this side here, as I said, we have the sockets for mounting a flash gun. The lenses on these cameras were the Konica Hexanon SLR lenses with the Autorex mount, and these are really superb quality lenses. Konica was, in Japan is known as the Konishiroku company. It's actually a very old camera company and began producing cameras in the early, or I guess late 19th century. And they were a major producer of cameras and equipment in the early 20th century and during wartime, and then got back into the business of photography in the post-war years. And pretty much everything Konica made over that time was really high quality. Today Konica is still in business, known as Konica Minolta, and they still make medical equipment, scanners and things like that, as well as office equipment or whatever, and they still make some or I don't know if they make them, but at least they put their name brand on some kinds of cameras and such, which are sold and marketed here in Japan. Removing the lens is quite simple. You simply push on the lever here and turn it like so. And it's a very simple system, a very simple bayonet mount for the lens. Line up the red marks here when you put the lens back on and turn it clockwise until it locks in place. One thing to worry about on these cameras is that the helicoid in the lens can get a little bit sticky and will need to be lubricated usually to get it to turn more easily. Luckily that's kind of easy on these cameras, because if you take off the lens and you focus it out to the close focus and look inside, you can actually see the threads to the lens helicoid. So you can oil these if necessary to make it easier to turn. I wish that was something that I could do on all SLR camera lenses, but often I need to disassemble them before I can do any lubrication or anything like that. The viewfinder in this camera is quite good, and the focusing screen on the camera has vertical lines on either side to let you know, or I guess to identify the half frame format, so you're able to properly compose your photos when you're shooting in half frame. Now, these cameras were generally, like this one here, available in a silver finish, but black paint versions were also produced. And here in Japan, the black paint versions tend to sell for about $100 more than the silver ones. Recently, over the last couple of years, these have increased in popularity. For a while, these were pretty much almost disposable cameras, and you could buy them here for next to nothing, or sometimes, sometimes for nothing, as long as you paid the postage for it. But recently, people have kind of appreciated the quality of these cameras and the quality of the optics, and their value has increased. And here in Japan, a good working example like this one sells for about $200 or so. The standard lens for these cameras was a 55mm f1.7 or 52mm f1.8, and a f1.4 lens was also an option. They also had a 35mm wide-angle lens and one 35mm telephoto lens, and this covers most of the important focal lengths. So overall, a pretty good camera and a good system camera. Anyway, that's it for my video about the Konica Autorex full-frame, half-frame SLR camera. If you like this video, please push the like button. If you want to see more videos about vintage Japanese cameras, please subscribe. I'm working on more videos this week, and hopefully we'll have at least 3 or 4 more up over the next week. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.